Hey everybody, we have finally reached the end of this crazy, complicated, beautiful, amazing book called the Book of Ezekiel. It's taken us a year and a half to get through Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, and now Ezekiel. And the rest of the year, we are getting into much smaller books of the prophets. But for today, we're wrapping up Ezekiel, looking at chapters 46 to 47. Now, if you've read these chapters, you might again wonder what the heck is going on. There's a lot of descriptions about offerings, there's a lot of measurements, there's a lot of talk about land and geography, and if you're not kind of really well versed in the sacrificial system, and you're not really well versed in the geography of ancient Israel, a lot of this can just seem like very strange and foreign, and you might think, why is this even here? I don't know what this means. And that's perfectly normal. Don't freak out. When we come across passages like this, where there's a lot of kind of description and a lot of specifics, and it's talking about customs and places that we are not familiar with, we should think, instead of just skipping over these sections, we should actually wrestle with it and say, okay, I may not know what these places are or what these words mean or what these customs are, but this is in here for a reason, and I want to try to discover why it's here. And so in Ezekiel chapters 46, 47, and 48, there's a couple of things that are going on. In chapter 46, there's this description of basically the new temple that is being set up and the restoring of the priestly sacrificial system of coming into the temple and of people being able to bring their sacrifices again and worship God the way that they were intended to. So what is this about? Well, there is, instead of having to go through the king and being dictated through the king, in this section it's really clear that God is the king. There's a guy named the prince who seems like he's the king, but notice he's not called the king, he's called the prince. He is serving under the ultimate king, and that is God. So the people are no longer under the rule of a king, because that didn't end really well, but God is now their king, not a human king. And in this section, what we see is, compared to the sacrificial system that is present in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, this one's slightly different. And people have tried to harmonize the two and try to compare the two, but really this is just a vision. And what's happening in the vision? Well, God is doing something greater and he's doing something new. In other words, in the new creation, God is up to new and greater things than the old ways of doing things. So that's point number 2. And point number 3, the temple is at the center of this whole scene. Everything flows from the temple. It's the centerpiece of geography, and this gets described again. But what does this mean? Well, it means that worship will again be at the center of the people of Israel, of God's people, that the worship and coming and being in God's presence, that will be the defining characteristic of them as a people once again. That instead of idolatry and kind of living for themselves or turning to other gods or other nations, instead they will be a people who are defined with God at their center and right worship of God again. So that's chapter 46. Chapter 47, Ezekiel has this vision where he's taken kind of outside the temple and he steps foot in kind of ankle-deep water, and this angel or this person on the vision kind of takes him on a tour, and the water gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and all of a sudden he can't get across, it's so deep. And he looks and he realizes that the water is coming from underneath the temple. There's no immediate source. It's not like rain coming down the hills. It's the temple is overflowing this water. And the interesting thing about this water is it's described as in the same terms as the chaos waters that dominated the ancient Near East thinking. And so in their thinking, the chaos waters were signified by usually a certain god or goddess. And in the beginning, in Genesis 1, we are told that God calmed the chaos waters. It says, in the beginning, the world was formless and void, and darkness hovered over the deep. What this is talking about is that the world was this watery, wild, chaotic wasteland, and that God tamed it with his word and controlled it and gave it meaning and purpose. And here, the same thing is happening. God is taking these ancient chaos waters, which people associated with these foreign gods of destruction, and instead, he transforms this chaos water into life-giving waters, that as it flows, it gives life to all that are around it. And people can go and trees sprout up and eat its fruit, and the fruit provides healing to people. And there's this sense that this river starts really small, it's ankle deep, and then eventually it just gets bigger and bigger. It increases exponentially in size. And again, where is this coming from? Well, God is the one who supplies this life-giving water. He takes the chaos and he transforms it into something that's life-giving. It starts small and becomes exponentially bigger, which should remind us of some of Jesus' parables about the mustard seed growing into a great tree, for example, that God is doing something that seems small, but is really going to be significant and life-changing and life-giving. And then finally, the very last chapter, chapter 48, is this really long description of the land and people being reapportioned the land. And so what's this about? Well, it's about God renewing and expanding the promised land as he originally promised to Moses. You may remember that God originally promised this land to his people, and as they went in, it didn't turn out that way. They conquered some of the land, but they were disobedient and didn't do what God asked. And so the land that they kind of occupied was actually much smaller than the land that God originally promised them. But here, the full size of the land is being restored. And there's some things to know. One, that foreigners are welcomed into God's family in this new divided land, which is pretty amazing, that those who were once outside are now being brought inside. And then that the division of the land is not arbitrary. Every group has like a certain section, and they're roughly equal size, and there's this sacred space in the middle. And so you can look up maps about what this looks like, but essentially there's a sacred space in the middle, and then there's land that's being allocated to all the 12 tribes of Israel going outward. And so what's in this sacred center space? Well, it's a city where the temple is, and the city is given a new name. Instead of being Jerusalem, the new name is the Lord is there. And this is how the Ezekiel ends. This picture of the land being restored, the people being restored, the temple being restored, of living waters flowing out and bringing healing and life to those around it, and then God being the very center where he is present with his people once more. So this is the vision that Ezekiel gives to people who are lost and in exile, to say, even though you have sinned and messed up, do not give up hope. That is not the end of the story. God is going to restore all things. He's going to make us new. He's going to restore us to our land and our culture once again. And he is going to be the centerpiece. He's going to tame the chaos that's around us and turn it into transformative, life-giving, life-healing waters. So this is the picture that we are left with. It's a beautiful picture, and it gets echoed throughout other places in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And essentially, this is what the book of Revelation picks up when it describes what the new heavens and the new earth are going to be like. So I will leave you with this beautiful picture that God is going to make all things new, and this is the promise that we ought to hold on to. So may that guide you as you go through your day and your week, and we'll see you back here next time for Daniel chapter 1. Bye.